Hey guys, just gonna go over the ZDPS Witch Doctor build that I'm currently using right now. So the first thing I'm gonna do is just go over the paragon points that you can use first. So for paragon points, it's pretty flexible. You always want to max out your movement speed first, and then you can switch between intelligence and vitality depending on what you feel you need more of. So that'll be fine. And it's very flexible on your level. You don't have to be a high paragon level to use this ZDPS build. And this ZDPS build can bring you up to greater rifts in groups of up to 110 plus up to 120. It's very easy to survive. For offense, for this, if you're lower paragon level, you do want to go with cooldown reduction and attack speed first over the crit chance and crit hit damage. For defense, things you can aim for is definitely life and armor first, over the resist all and life regeneration. Here you get a lot of all res from your intelligence points. And then in utility, you want to get life per hit and resource cost reduction if you're a lower level. Now, for the items that we're using, this is actually a pretty unique set for a ZDPS build. We're essentially utilizing two different set bonuses to make you very, very durable, almost unkillable. In this case, as long as you're playing smart. So, what we have here is that we're going to have this Arakir set. So here I'm using the helmet. So you have intelligence, vit, and armor. And then a cooldown reduction gem. Your secondary stats are not as important, but ideally you have some type of resistance, and then pickup radius is very useful. For shoulder, intelligence, vitality. If you have armor, that's very good too, and then you want cooldown reduction. Roll as high as you can. Against secondary, it's pretty flexible on that. You also have the Arakir claws. You have intelligence, vit. Here you can also have pretty flexible, but here I have life per hit, that's pretty useful, and then cooldown reduction. Now the next set we're using is a Zuni set, so I have a Zuni chest. You have intelligence, vitality, armor. Zuni pants, intelligence, vitality, armor as well. And here I have some resistance pickup radius as well. And then lastly I have the string of skulls, Zuni Masa string of skulls. So here you're literally looking for cooldown reduction. Is the biggest part in this situation as well. And here obviously when you look at the Zudimasa set from here, you get the bonus of the 4th set when you use the Ring of Royal Grandeur when you cube that. So you and your pets take 3% less damage for every fetish you have alive, which is a significant damage reduction when you have all 15 fetish alive. Your fetish army also lasts until they die, and cooldowns reduced by 8%, but that's not the cooldown reduction for the fetish arm is not as important, as you don't really use that in this build. Now I did mention for the Arakir set, the big thing that really helps with this one is that you get the 4 set bonus. Whenever you summon that Toge of Hugeness, you gain a 50% damage reduction and heal for 10% of your maximum life per second for 15 seconds. So those two combined give you huge survivability. So you're taking a lot less damage by having both of those set bonuses active. Now for your amulet, this is definitely a requirement. You need this Halsin's Ascent. You want the maximum roll for 8 seconds, and then as much cooldown reduction as you can on that. Then I'm also using for my bracers, the Lacumba's Ornament. Want intelligence, vitality, armor, life per hit, also some type of resistance, and when you use your Soul Harvest, it reduces all damage taken by 6% for each stack of Soul Harvest. And now when you're combining that with the Sacred Harvester, this lets you stack up to 10 times on that. And on this you want also cooldown reduction as well. I'm using a life per hit gem. For belt, I'm using the belt of Transcendence, intelligence, vitality, life percentage, and armor. And each time you hit with a mana spender, you summon a fetish, which is very useful. So in the beginning, you can just kind of spam a little bit of your haunt to gather up more fetishes. Then you will have an Oculus Ring. You want the maximum or as high as amount of damage increase as you can to help support your party, and then also cooldown reduction as well, and other defensive stats. Then for your boots, I'm using the illusory boots, intelligence, vitality, armor, and all resistance. That way you can move really freely throughout the Greater Rift to help assist your team. Now for gems, what I'm using is the Galgulk of Swiftness that gives you that cooldown reduction for each stack. Also increases your attack speed and dodge chance. You want to get that as high level as possible. Also using the Gem of Efficacious Toxin. This poisons all enemies that you hit, and then enemies that get poisoned take 10% increased damage from all sources and deal 10% less damage. So that's a good buff and reduction of damage for your team. And lastly, on an Obsidian Ring of Zodiac, which gives you the maximum roll of cooldown reduction on this one, and then the high attack speed roll possible. Each time you hit with a resource spending spell, reduces the cooldown of all your skills by 1 second, and this one I'm using the Esoteric Alteration. So you gain the maximum amount 60% non-physical damage reduction, and when you're below 50% health, you get an additional increase by 75%, which is really, really good. When you're looking at your weapons they're using, in the cube, using the Star Metal Kukri, so this reduces the cooldown of Fetish Army and Big Bad Voodoo by 1 second each time your fetishes deal damage. Also using Nemesis Bracers, that way whenever you hit a shrine or pylon, it summons the enemy champion for your team to kill him. And then the jewelry, of course, the Ring of Royal Grandeur. Now if someone else on your team in your party has a Nemesis Bracers, you can switch it out for potentially the Leoric's Crown for additional CDR, or anything other armor of your choice as well. So now let's go through the skills in this build. So skills we have here is first Haunt. I'm using Draining Spirit. So whenever you haunt something, it returns 12% mana per second, which is incredible. 2, I'm using the Piranado for piranhas. That way it gives additional 15% increased damage that is affected in that, and it's a nice little CC. Spirit Walk Jaunt allows you to move around pretty freely. Another survivability type of thing. Hex Jinx. Things that are hexed, they're unable to really perform any action. They turn into little piggies, and they take a 15% additional damage. Really good for your team. Soul Harvest. Languish. Increase your armor by 10% per harvest enemy and reduce the movement by 80% with 5. So there's another more survivability. And then the big thing is definitely the Big Bad Voodoo. And this one I'm using Slam Dance, which will increase the damage of all nearby allies by 15%. Of course, giving them attack speed and move speed buff. Now, if you feel like your team is a little squishy, they need more survivability, you can change it where you switch it to maybe the Ghost Trance, and healing nearby enemies for 5% of your maximum health, and reduces all damage taken by 20%. So that could be a very useful one as well. Other skills, using Tribal Rites, reduces the cooldown of all your big skills you're using for CC, like Hex and Big Bad Voodoo by 25%. Swampland Attunement, allowing you and your pets to gain a lot of resistance when there's enemies nearby. And then Bad Medicine, whenever you're dealing poison damage, its damage reduced by 25% for 5 seconds. So that really helps your team as well. And then another last survivability is a Spirit Vessel. So it's essentially a get out of jail free card that you can use once every 60 seconds. Is very useful as well. So those are the summary of all the skills and things that you can use for this ZDPS Witch Doctor build, and it's a lot of fun to play. So feel free to try it out for that. If you have any questions, be sure to leave that in the comments below, and I'll try to get to and answer all your questions that you may have for that.